Good evening, everyone. We are going to call the City of Deltona City Commission Workshop for Monday, September 27th, 2021 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Vela Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner King.
Here.
Commissioner McCool.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
She's excused.
Mayor Hertzberg.
Here. And now may we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner King, would you like to do the honors?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have one item on our workshop, and that is a discussion and review of our food truck ordinance. Mr. Paradise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron Paradise, Planning and Development Services, for the record. This is the second workshop we've had on mobile food dispensing vehicles, i.e. food trucks. Just to kind of give a 30,000-foot view, none of the regulations here are intended to preclude food trucks from operating within the city. You know, the state's kind of established that local governments need to be able to allow these types of activities. Really, these regulations are intended to promote safe and appropriate location of food trucks within the community in a manner that comports with city aesthetic standards. I do have a PowerPoint presentation tonight, and we'll kind of just go through this to kind of, like I said, give an overview of the proposed regulations. We did send out notice of this meeting and a copy of the regulation to a list of stakeholders that we garnered from a city commission meeting here a number of weeks ago. So without further ado, we will continue with the PowerPoint presentation. Basically, what we have here is Florida Statutes 509-102. This was passed in 2020, and basically it's a preemption with a municipality or other local government precluding food trucks. We can't preclude them, but we can regulate how they operate, where they operate through zoning and some of the land development regulations. We do have existing regulation in Chapter 22 that covers food trucks, and it's generally or generically referred to as street vendors, okay? And a street vendor is defined as a person that offers for sale any goods or services or merchandise, etc. Again, this includes food trucks. We have held that food trucks need to be located on commercially zoned properties and that are actively used with landowner permission. Moving on to the draft amendment. It's in an ordinance format. It was included as part of your all's agenda. It defines mobile food dispensing vehicle, i.e. food truck. It regulates the operation of mobile food dispensing vehicles within the city limits. It deletes section 22-190, which involves food vending at houses of worship. And it articulates location standards, safety requirements, exemptions, and enforcement. With that being said, we've come up with a mobile food dispensing vehicle definition, which is predicated heavily on state definition, kind of threw in some reference to section 22-191 of City Code to make it a little bit more locally specific. Keep in mind, this regulation only delves into the regulation of mobile food dispensing vehicles. There are other itinerant merchant activities that we've seen out in the community at large that involve everything from, I don't know, buffet restaurants set up under tents to people selling household goods out of the trunk of cars. This particular ordinance does not cover that type of itinerant merchant activity. Proposed regulations includes food truck documentation that involves various licensing. That includes licensing from the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, i.e. the state of Florida. There's fire safety inspection reports, fire safety inspection report required, and the city is going to require notarized authorization for owner for a food truck to locate on an appropriate piece of property. The city, to ensure that the health, welfare, and safety of the public are protected, is going to require a site plan. This is not, we had a discussion about professionally prepared site plans and whatnot, and realizing that may have been a little bit too onerous, what the city did is came back and proposed a site plan at a scale of at least 1 inch equals 100 feet, and they can download that off of like Google Maps or something like that and draw out where they're going to be. Not professionally prepared, something that, is pretty easy to do at the kitchen table. Going to be looking on that site plan for property boundaries, parking, driveway cuts, buildings improvements, and so forth. Just so we have a context and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit more about one of these, the safety parameters. I will say the rationale for a lot of these regulations is public safety. For example, we don't want to create a condition where we have a food truck on a piece of property that results in cars, waiting to turn into the commercial driveway cut where they're queued in a in a travel lane of a thoroughfare. Come around the corner of thoroughfare X and there's a line of cars in the travel lane. That could be dangerous. Food safety. We're going to require, or it's suggested that a copy of the menu of what's being served be submitted to the city so that we'd have some idea or to better manage potential food safety. I will say this. Inspections of these mobile food dispensing vehicles are done by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, just like a bricks and mortar type of restaurant. I do not know what the mechanics of those inspections are. I'm not sure what the schedule is, but DPBR did say that it is their responsibility to inspect these mobile food dispensing vehicles. Location standards. Going to handle a lot of the location standards that'll be underpinned by zoning. A mobile food dispensing activity could be located within existing active commercial use in a C1, C2, or C3 zoned area. Vacant, undeveloped parcels or lots or non-active commercially used areas are not eligible for food truck use. Commercially zoned properties used principally for residential are not eligible for food truck use. We do have some areas that are houses used residentially that are zoned C1, for example. These would not be eligible for food truck use. We have plan unit developments that have commercial and or industrial elements to them. Mixed use plan unit development, business plan unit development, and industrial plan unit development. These zoned areas can be used for food trucks if their development agreements, their written development agreements, do allow food truck use. With regard to house of worship properties, actively used and developed house of worship properties, regardless of zoning, because these institutional uses sometimes are zoned R1, may be eligible for food truck use. Parking standards. Parking is a big deal. It's not uncommon for some of these developments in this city, mostly older developments, to be underparked, meaning they may not even have enough parking to support the uses that exist on site right now. And bringing a food truck operation onto one of these sites could further stress that parking challenge. With regard to the location of the food truck, it needs to be located on a paved surface, cannot be located with any public right-of-way, or obstruct any drive aisle, driveway throat, cross-access area, or any parking, or associated with any parking facility, or obstruct any site triangle. May not be located at eligible facilities where parking is not adequate to serve the business facility. And we'll determine all this through that site plan review. And may not occupy, obstruct, or impede access to any handicap space. And finally, it's envisioned that these mobile food operations will be kind of more of a drive-through type of experience where people drive up, park, get their food, get in their car, and leave. And the intent is they would not be setting up tents, chairs, or tables. And you wouldn't be eating in the parking lot, because what that would do would expand the aerial extent of this food truck operation and basically utilize more parking and potentially encroach on drive aisles and so forth as well. Fire safety is an element of this regulation. The number 10 seems to be a common denominator, you know, as far as location separations, like can't be less than 10 feet from all buildings, vehicles, and combustible materials. Access to fire lanes must be maintained. LP gas and generator storage has to be consistent with the Florida Fire Prevention Code. We talk a little bit about enforcement, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes here. Hazards. The intent is that mobile food dispensing vehicles shall not be associated with any any hazardous or unsafe conditions. You know, no excessive noise, vibration, harshness, odors, electronic interference. Food trucks typically use generators. Generators cannot exceed manufacturer noise specifications. Some additional regulations. Businesses with 100 or more full-time equivalent employees per 8-hour shift at a single developed commercial industrially zoned parcel may have multiple food dispensing vehicles. They would be exempt from the one food truck per 5 acres, developed acres, or the 2 food trucks allowed for developed acres or commercial uses that are 5 acres or greater. They'd also would be exempt from the hours of operation, which are intended to be mostly limited to daytime only, limited for between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Kind of get a little bit of an evening opportunity there. Advertising. This came up in the last workshop about signage, banners, sign twirlers, and so forth. The intent is to limit identifying copy depicted on a single vehicle or trailer engaged in mobile vending activity. No signs, banners, flags, sandwich boards, or similar will be allowed in a city right-of-way or on private property. In no cases shall people hold signs, merchandise, or attempt to advertise for a mobile food dispensing vehicle in a public right-of-way. No other attention-getting devices such as, lighting beyond, illumination, music, etc. will be allowed as well. There are some exemptions. This regulation does not deal with special event permitting that is outlined within Article 10 of the city's land development regulations. And any mobile food dispensing vehicle operating under an approved special event permit operating under the terms of that special event, including date, hours of operation, et cetera, will be considered exempt. Again, different permitting process and so forth. There are some commonalities, but it's a different process. Enforcement. Mobile food dispensing vehicles. The first order of business is they don't have the permission, for example, or, something's going, not working right. The city's going to ask them to pack up and leave. If they don't, there's going to be a $500 fine, and it'll be assessed to the underlying landowner. With that being said, I'd be happy to field any questions y'all may have with regard to this topic.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Ron. Had a couple of questions and comments here that I would like to go over. Just briefly, and I'm talking a 30,000-foot view, because I know that we have people listening, we have residents listening, and we have entrepreneurs listening. Can you tell me just an example? C1, C2, C3. Okay, BPUD, MPUD, or IPUD. Can you just go over that for people that may be listening that aren't familiar with, just give me an example of those areas, right, so that we can use it in practical terms.
Yes, ma'am. A C1 zoned area within the city is 1200 Deltona Boulevard. Good example. C2 zoned area is some of the area along Saxon Boulevard, right there at the interchange. These plan unit developments, we've got a fair amount of them. Deltona Village is a business plan unit development. Amazon, industrial plan unit development. Halifax Hospital, business plan unit development. I do not think, though we have an option for that, I cannot recollect seeing a mixed-use plan unit development depicted on the city's zoning map.
Okay. And I just wanted, like I said, 30,000 foot. So my reason for asking that is I'm thinking that, what I'm wanting explained for our residents, because there is a misnomer there that the city, first of all, wants to get the hands in the pocket of entrepreneurs, food trucks, when we do not. Anything that we're talking about here is about life safety, human safety, food safety, period. That's it. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I want to back businesses. We want our businesses. While that's being said, there's a responsibility of any business owner to follow codes and the reason and understand, right? As a business owner, we have to understand our business plan, how we relate to the community with our business plan, to make sure that we're profitable and safe, right? So with that being said, we work with the food truck, right? We've had meetings, right, with business owners, right?
Yeah,
food truck owners?
we talked to at least one food truck not operator, but I guess agent, if you will, that right down here at the church at the corner of Tivoli and Providence. And we've sent this out to a stakeholder group that we talked to at a city commission meeting when they appeared there. And if I may, I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought here. This generation of food truck regulations had some language omitted that talked about the city having a food truck event here at City Hall. There's still a plan to do that at least twice a week. We felt it was better to handle that administratively versus codifying it in the context of an ordinance.
And I agree with you there. And clearing up also what I like to say is a chatter of 1,000 monkeys on Facebook. The other piece of misinformation there is that the city is doing that because they want to make money and take money out of pockets of food truck operators. That's simply not it. We have the space here for operators to spread out, right? There is concerns about permeable surface here. That's why it's so important when we talk about parking in the grass. And it is not that we are trying to stop people from operating their business, but we have a responsibility to protect 100,000 people in doing that. None of this is meant to be punitive, okay? With that being said, I want to make sure that we have a working knowledge of what the Florida Fire Prevention Code is, because part of this, part of the ordinance draft, part of everything that we're concerned about has to do with fire safety, human safety, right? Concerns about parking, how traffic flow goes, right? Listen, I've been up to an unnamed food truck with the flags out, and it makes it absolutely unsafe the way that they're staged, right, for traffic. I've been in some situations where it is absolutely unsafe. So it's about life safety. And so I want to make sure, Ron, that we have a fire department representative that is always available to talk in layman's terms, because when I went to go look at Florida Fire Prevention Code, and when you start looking at that as is any bureaucratic, rot and paperwork, in practical terms, we have smart people, and it just needs to be explained that way. So I want to make sure that we have someone from the fire department available to help our business owners understand when and why, right? If they don't understand what part of this applies to the Fire Prevention Code, that those questions are answered. And I want it to be actually helpful and not preachy. So I just wanted to make sure that that's going on. And is this draft ordinance, we're just seeing this, right? Has anyone from the public seen this yet, Ron?
Yeah, we did send this out to a list of stakeholders. We emailed it out, I want to say last Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. What I also, and have we addressed the concerns of the business owners in plain, simple terms? Have we, I know that you said that you met with someone, but in practical terms, have we met with, what are the main concerns that you hear from the business owners as far as this goes?
They have not reached out to us. We're anticipating that this forum would be their opportunity to ask questions and, provide constructive input on the formulation of this regulation.
Okay, and just two more. When we talk about now the special permits, and I know setting up food trucks, getting people in and out, I know a lot of people come up, get their trucks, cars leave. When we have special events, however, when we're encouraged to mingle, right, will they be able to have the tents, chairs, and tables? I enjoy that. That's why I'm asking. It's part of the experience.
Under the special events, that would all be looked at under that Article 10 permitting structure.
Okay. And also, do we have in code compliance code compliance help, okay, for a business owner that might need it? Because I will tell you this, setting up, we went way off track, and I'm going to own that when we were explaining the site plans, because people lost their mind over that, right? A site plan in layman's terms that I understand is looking at the address where you would like to have an event, doing a Google aerial of it, which you can screenshot, print out, and draw where things are going to go. We need that. Like, it's not meant to be punitive. It's meant to be a guide so that our safety people, meaning code compliance and fire, know. First of all, they have situational awareness where there might be a problem that evening, right? They can help to prevent that. It's preventative, and we need to do that. So I want to make sure that someone in code compliance is ready to help those business owners get right. We want to, our main job here, guys, is to get to yes for our residents and our business owners. And I'm really trying to get us away from that narrative that this is supposed to be, it's not punitive. It makes me crazy looking at the stuff. I'm looking at a young man right now who knows what's up. He's a responsible business owner that we talked today and had to like sit people down, because as a commissioner, I really want you to bring me what your concerns are. I'm not being a smart butt when I ask that, because there's so much dis and misinformation out there, Ron. So the last two things, I just want to make sure that we have someone that would actively help with the Florida Fire Prevention Code, and that we have someone with code compliance that will help. And we can't tell people that we're going to help them and then not be available to help them. So do we have that covered?
Ron, let me take
Go
this
ahead.
one. Let me take this one. Ms. Nicole, we definitely do. This has been a collaborative process. Mr. Paradise has not done this in a vacuum. He works with our city attorney. He works with Ms. Shivers, our fire marshal. He works with myself and co-compliance. We have immersed ourselves into the process. My direction when we first met, Ron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we needed to find a process to ensure that these are safe situations. My utmost concern is safety. Ms. Shivers has a trifold brochure, or it might be a bifold brochure, on the proper way of storing your propane tanks and where you should park for food trucks. It's specifically about food trucks. She has that information to share with the food truck vendors. They do their inspections. We had a recent event that I think had 18 food trucks, and 14 of them had been properly reviewed by the fire marshal, 4 were not. That was a concern. Food trucks are basically fall in 3 categories. Ron alluded to 2 of them. One of them is what this ordinance covers for the individual trucks. The second is special events. We have gone through a learning process over the last 2 to 3 months. We currently have a gentleman who is bringing forth an application that appears to be complete. We are expediting the reviews for it because they want to have an event in October. And then the third category is just events. Events by ordinance are those that are on city-owned property or city right-of-ways. As Ron said, our plan is to have 2 per week at City Hall or another facility owned by the city. We will get the event permit for it. We don't plan to charge for the event. We are providing it as a community service. We recognize that the food trucks are a vital part of our community. And so when we started this whole process, what I told Ron to do was to take a good hard look at the City of Orlando's code. And many of the aspects that we have in our ordinance that we're proposing came from Orlando. The one key difference is the part about a business of over 100 employees. One of the problems that we have heard from the larger employers is the difficulty of their employees to leave the site to find something to eat and get back in a reasonable time. Give you, for example, Amazon. They go on a dinner break. They basically have 4 choices: McDonald's, Burger King, Wawa, and Racetrack. They have 1,500 employees. Imagine what that's like. And so this change in the ordinance would allow an Amazon to have several food trucks on site for their employees to get a meal on their break, not have to leave the site. Guess what? That kind of helps the public too, because that's fewer cars that are on the road. So we contain them on site, reduce the traffic impact, and help the business with their operations. So that was one of the last changes we made to this. We believe that we have an ordinance that is first and foremost about safety. And if you get your permit under this ordinance, we leave you alone. Unless the owner pulls your approval for you to be there, you literally can be there every day and be in compliance. So I think we have struck an excellent balance for the public safety as well as the needs of the individual business people.
Thank you. And my last comment is this, that I have asked the city to do their part in helping our businesses be successful. I have, and I know that we all have. I'm saying me because I'm speaking from me right now, right? I have asked the city, we have all asked the city to look into this, to make sure, how do we get the businesses to yes, right? And I'm asking the business owners to do this now. We all have an investment to protect. Your trucks, right? Your businesses, your livelihood, your family livelihood. You have to, it's your job to protect that, your business owners. All the residents are investors also. Any taxpayer is an investor in the health and safety of the city. The taxes pay for firefighting, crime prevention, right, for us to keep our city rolling forward as we need to grow in development. And it's a heavy responsibility. So you have a heavy responsibility, dear food truck owners, on your shoulders, right, to help us all protect the investment. So protect your investment. Remember that this is it's not meant to be punitive. It's about having you engage with the city, right, and how we protect everybody's business and everybody's safety at one time. And the last thing that I ask you, and wish you well in your business, because I've been to a lot of y'all's businesses and I love them. But what I would ask you is that we are working really, really hard, and I know that you are too, but when you see the spread of misinformation, I ask you to take a moment and think about your investment, right? Your investment in the city. When you see stuff that you know is not right, because people that aren't even involved like handing down lies or gossip third and fourth hand. So as a business owner and an investor, right, and I'm asking you guys to correct it when you see it and help us make this a good investment for everybody. I'm sorry it was long-winded, but
No, it's okay.
it needed to be said. You know, we're all investing. We're investing in your business also, and we want to see you succeed. So you see that we have willing people, we have open people. We're working hard, and we want to help you guys get to yes. So that's all I have, Ron. Thank you. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah, prior to 2020, what was the overwhelming problem with food trucks, and how many times did code enforcement have to stop and visit a food truck?
I don't have the exact statistics on their interactions with food trucks. You know, it's been a periodic issue that crops up, especially with some of these poorly located food trucks that involve, creating traffic matters and whatnot. We've heard complaints through the years from everybody from the traveling public to brick and mortar restaurants and so forth.
Is any of that documented that I could get my hands on to review? Because personally, I've never seen an overwhelming problem with the food trucks set up. I know there's been some issues with what were considered events, but the standalone food truck sitting at the Dollar General or, wherever, I've never seen an issue with it. And you stated that this bill was passed in 2020. Isn't it didn't House Bill, 474, didn't that just take effect this July? I thought it took effect July 2021.
Are you referring to the home-based businesses?
Yeah.
Yeah, that did come into effect here
And I thought that was in regards to the food trucks as well. House Bill 474 and 1171 and House Bill 474. Those are all. This just happened in July of this year, and all of a sudden now we have an issue with food trucks. just sitting on, in a private piece of property. And I'm just curious what the overwhelming problem has been in the last few months that necessitates this.
Ron, I'll take this one. The problems that we have had, sir, I'm going to give you some specific examples. At the corner of Normandy and Providence, for a time period, we had a hot dog vendor who was parked in the right-of-way of Providence and Normandy, who was extremely close to the gas tanks, the gas dispensers with propane tanks. At the corner of Deltona Boulevard and Enterprise, there's a church there. There was a vendor there, and quite popular. I can personally attest to the fact that it had very good food. But it was so popular that cars were backed out into Deltona Boulevard. And I, in fact, almost hit somebody because there's a blind curve right there. We have had people who were parked in the grass near the Winn-Dixie on Howland with banners literally hanging out over Howland. The vendor standing in the sidewalk waving a sign, creating, and in fact, personally had seen cars stop in Howland, get out to go get food.
What time of day is this happening?
Let me finish, sir. Let me finish,
I've never
please.
seen it.
I had a commissioner call me about the exact same thing. You know, I'm not saying that the overall industry is bad. That's the last thing I'm saying. We have had documented cases of safety issues, and that's what this ordinance is about. Get a one-time permit, run a safe operation just like any other commercial business, and then we're all good to go. Your question was there a problem, and the problem was out there prior to July 1st of this year. It has been an ongoing problem ever since I worked here at the city. And we're just trying to address the safety aspect of it. And I believe we got a good balance between, we didn't require a full engineering site plan. You can take a Google Earth map, mark it up, and so we are trying to find that balance to ensure that we have a safe operation and that the vendors can do one time and be done.
Now you're saying at Normandy and Providence you had a hot dog vendor parked by the gas pumps. Isn't there a state ordinance telling you how far away you can operate equipment from a gas pump? Would that not fall under that without having to go to a whole new ordinance? And if they're blocking the ingress and the egress, that would go to Volusia County Sheriff's Office as a safety concern. I don't think the ordinance needs to address that. And, when I look at this here, most of these food truck vendors, they already get an annual fire inspection through the state. Now we want to get another one through the city or the county. They carry health insurance that covers foodborne illnesses. They go through health inspections all the time through the state. They're state licensed. They carry general liability insurance. They carry property damage liability insurance and foodborne illness insurance. So my problem is that we're trying to control a problem that I don't think needs controlled. We're talking about, private businesses and site plans. When that business was first developed, it had a site plan. It said, here's your building, here's X amount of parking lots. And that's where the city should stop. What that business owner does with his parking spots is up to the business. If he wants to dedicate 2 or 3 spots for a food truck, that's his priority. He knows he will lose 2 or 3 spots for his customer base if need be. If I'm a business owner and I have a food truck come say, hey, do you mind if we set up in your business? Sure, no problem. Okay? If I see that the food truck is taking up too much of my parking or causing congestion in my business and it's affecting my bottom line, I'm going to go to the food truck and say, no hard feelings, but this isn't working. That's where free enterprise comes in. I don't think we need to regulate private businesses, because I'll tell you right now, with this policy and putting property owners at risk, you're running food trucks out of Deltona. Because me as a property owner, if you come to me and say, hey, look, you know, we're going to let you do this food truck, you need to give us a notarized consent form. Then you're going to be liable if this happens. Then you're going to be liable if that happens. You know what? I'm going to say this is too much of a headache just to let somebody use a few of my parking spots, and I'm going to say no thank you. So, yeah, and licenses of associated alcohol with alcohol sales. Why does the city need to get involved with that? If somebody's dispensing alcohol through a mobile license, then that should be done through the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. City of Deltona does not need to pass an ordinance. And honestly, to get a menu, why do we need a menu? It doesn't matter what that vendor is selling. It absolutely makes no difference. I could care what they're selling. You know, if they want to, whatever, they're going to sell whatever the market demands. If it's chicken wings, it's chicken wings. If it's pig feet, it's pig feet. It's whatever the market demands. You know, I don't see the overwhelming problem. I drive around Deltona a lot. That's about all I do all day. I see a truck here, a truck there, and I never see any issues. I know there was one you're saying that was an event that caused some backups, but I believe that one has been addressed. I think the lady that came up and spoke about that, you know, downsized, you know, how many trucks she's going to allow on her event property. And I just don't understand the reasoning that for this ordinance. It makes absolutely no sense other than we want to just control more. And quick question, the P&Z board, did this go before them yet?
No, this is not advanced through the process yet.
This hasn't even gone through P&Z for
No,
ordinances?
it's just in the workshop stage. We're in the scoping process now.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't see the overwhelming problem. Honestly, tonight's workshop should have been on a bigger issues. I mean, we got a lot bigger issues than food trucks. I'll give somebody else a chance to speak.
Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Commissioner McCoo, thank you. When you talked about this, really is not about us against them. This is really not. We want, and I visit a few of them, to be quite honest with you, and I enjoy them. So it's not us against them. And it's a shame that sometimes things get twisted and put a certain way for X, Y reasons. But Ron, I just have 3 questions. Number 1, can you clarify in reference to the house of worship? Because I saw an interview this morning in Channel 13, and what was stated was that we're taking away this right from the house of worship to have these food trucks. Is that true?
No, regardless of zoning, they'd be eligible. A developed, actively used house of worship property would be eligible for a food truck.
So it's incorrect, the fact that we're denying house of worships to be able to carry on with this. Okay. Special events. Commissioner McCoo touched on one of them when it relates to tents and chairs. Special events, are they limited to 2 trucks?
No, sir.
So special events can have multiples of trucks.
It's a different animal.
Because again, the misinformation that it's out there that for special events, they're only limiting us for 2 trucks. It's incorrect. You just have to get a special events permit. Talking about permit, is there a fee for a permit?
Nope.
Thank you, sir.
Ron, can you clarify that? There is a fee for what? A special events permit, there's a fee.
Yeah, there is a $50 fee for a special events permit, but there's not a fee as part of this proposed ordinance to apply.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner King?
I have a few questions. Is that better? Fire inspections. Do the vendors have to have an inspection, a fire inspection by any state authority?
Yes, they have to have a fire inspection by.
How often do they have to have that fire inspection?
Every 6 months.
So if the state is already having them inspected every 6 months,
That's the local inspection, county or local inspection. I don't think there's a state fire inspection for these things.
Ron, can you ask Mr. Shivers to come up and answer?
Good evening. Okay.
Could you just
Speak up now,
for the
Beth,
record,
okay?
let us know your name and position, please?
Yes, I'm Sharon Shivers, Assistant Chief Fire Marshal for Deltona.
okay? So the question is, does the state inspect food vendors, food trucks, for fire safety? That's pretty simple.
I do not know if they inspect for fire safety because they're not licensed fire inspectors. They're doing an inspection, but to what extent, that I don't know. You have to be a certified state 633 statute certified fire inspector to do a fire safety inspection. So I don't know what the state is doing. I do know that the gas companies, there's a new requirement now for gas vendors. You have to have, or for the food vendors, I'm sorry, you have to have an annual gas inspection. Well, we just got wind that the Department of Ag, it has no regulations. They have no regulations on these food vendors either. So it's really lying heavily on local authorities having jurisdiction to make sure that they're in compliance with what they're needing to be in compliance with. So the state is not very much help on our aspect of it.
Okay. I suppose you could figure out why I'm asking that question. You know, I almost feel like we're double dipping if they're having to be inspected already, and then we're going to inspect them too. And by the way, there's a charge for that inspection, is there not?
There is not.
There's none.
There is nothing on our fee schedule for an inspection for a food vendor.
Okay.
If they were to apply for a business tax receipt, which I understand may not be eligible for them to have to do, that would be included in their business tax receipt, but they're not required. If they have a business tax receipt for another municipality, they're not required to get another one through the city. If they do, there's no charge to them. It's just more for record keeping.
Okay. All right. That's one question. When we talked earlier, this is probably going to be addressed to Ron. When we talked about this earlier, Ron, we had some suggestions about how to figure out how many food trucks could be on a piece of property. You know, and at the time, it was exactly what you have in here now. One food truck for 5 acres or less, and two trucks for something over 5 acres. I was under the impression that we kind of were in agreement that we were going to look closer at this and maybe change that, because, you know, I envision, you know, for instance, Deltona Lakes Baptist Church. That's a pretty good sized parking lot. It's 6 acres, so it's over the 5. We could have 2. But the fact is that that is a huge parking lot. And to limit that number of 2 to a parking lot that could hold 6 easily just doesn't seem right. I thought that we had talked about changing that to give a little bit more leeway and make provisions for more than one food truck to be on a piece of property based on possibly the number of parking stalls or some other criteria rather than talking about acreage.
It was my recollection that there was discussion about clarification of what exactly was developed and undeveloped acreage in relation to a parcel. The number of food trucks here suggested is just a guideline, a recommendation, if you will. If it's the intent to look at more food trucks on a developed piece of property, we can certainly look into that, especially larger pieces that are 5 acres in size or greater.
All right. Well, I think there ought to be something in writing, you know. Hey, I enlisted. When I went down to the recruiter and he told me what I was going to get, I said, you better put it in writing, because I know I'm not going to get it if you don't put it in writing. And so I think that we ought to put something in there that says, based on the conditions or the facility, that it is possible to have more than one truck there.
We'll certainly look into that.
Can I jump in?
Well, let me, Commissioner King, as I alluded to earlier, there are 3 different categories in which food, well, actually 4 now, in which food trucks can be there. First is this ordinance, which is basically by rights. The second is special events. That's things that fall outside of what would be by right, and then events is on city property, and then the situation with businesses with over 100 employees. Going back to the by rights, what we tried to do was come up with a reasonable number so that when people come in and get the permit that doesn't cost them money, they have a right to be there. If you want to have more than, let's say, the Lowe's Plaza, over 5 acres, you could have by right 2 food trucks. If you wanted to have more than 2 food trucks, then you need to get a special event permit. That costs $50. The review process is very similar, but the key is making sure that we have adequate parking for that facility. You know, going back to Commissioner Sosa's comment a few minutes ago, yes, you have commercial businesses that have gotten a permit to be there. And part of the key in our land development code is the parking requirements to ensure that we have adequate parking for whatever the use is on site. If we were to allow people to put a second and third use on that property, irrespective of the available parking, then we're going to start having trouble. That's when we start having cars backing out into the street because it's inadequate parking spaces and that type of thing. What we're trying to do is have a reasonable standard. And so by right, what we are doing is saying if you're under 5 acres, you get 1. If you're over 5 acres, you get 2. That's by right. If you want more, get a special use permit, it's $50, and it's a very similar review process.
Commissioner, can I just ask a question in base of what you're asking? Because my understanding was that the whole 5 acres, 1 truck, 2 acres, more than 5 truck was for a truck that was quote unquote going to be permanently there for a substantial amount of days, not necessarily a 1 day and you're gone. So if I will go to Lowe's, there's an individual there. If that individual is going to be there from 5 days a week, then that's what we're talking about when it relates to, am I correct, or is this something?
You are correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I think, I'm sorry, Commissioner King, because I think that's what's bringing confusion, and I'm seeing it out there. Again, if there is a truck, a food truck that wants to be at a location for a specific amount of days constantly, then I think that's when that comes into play. 5 acres, 1 truck. More than 5 acres, you can have 2 trucks. But if you want to have multiple trucks, it's allowed. You just have to get a special event permit.
Correct.
Sorry, Commissioner
Okay.
King, and thank you.
All right, that brings me to my next question. How many special events can an establishment have in a month?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the code, and I don't have it here right in front of me.
Well, I think we need to know that. Because if you don't know and it's only one per month, that's not so good. It's important that we have that information.
I do not believe there is a limitation of one per month. In fact, we have an application in process now where they're asking for 2 per month. So, and that is within the special event code. So obviously, it's not 1 per month. You can have multiple per month. You just have to go through the process.
And pay $50 a month every time you want one. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So if I wanted one every week, I wanted a special event because I wanted 2 trucks instead of 1 truck, then I got to fork out $200 a month.
Potentially, yes, under the special events permit.
Okay. You know, it sure is a lot of fun to go get some food from a food truck. But not everybody, and me included, don't really want to grab my food and run home to eat it. So I'm a little concerned about the fact that we can no longer purchase our food and have a seat and eat the food right there and have, 2 or 3 of our families, friends come by and eat with us outside, open air, having a dinner together, having a little conversation. If I wanted to go home, here's what happens. People go home, and even at restaurants, they get inside, and they're on their phones. They don't even look at each other. They wait until the food comes, and then they put their phone down to eat. You go to a food truck outside, and everybody comes around. They congregate. They hang out. They talk. They socialize. And we're going to stop that. I don't think that is, I think we ought to look at that a little bit closer. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity and plenty of room. I mean, I even think about the church on Providence. That's not a huge parking lot. But you know what? When they're there, especially in the evenings, after hours, the parking lot is freaking empty. There's nobody there except people that come in to buy food. And then we go and say, no, you can't. First, you can't have 2 unless you get a special permit. And secondly, you got to take your food home or go someplace else, find a park bench, go to a park somewhere instead of just sitting right there. Put up a tent and have your meal. I think we should look at that a little bit more closely, because I think that we're, in that regard, I think we're missing out. I would rather promote socialization of our citizens with each other rather than to say, oh, just buy your food and, take it home. Take it home, go somewhere else.
Mr. King?
Yes, sir.
Let me address that. That is one of the key reasons why we have recommended, it's not part of the ordinance, but we have already started the process to have food events here at City Hall twice a week, for the very reason you're pointing out. Most of these food truck locations you go to do not have places for people to sit and eat. They're designed for people to pick up food and leave. They're not designed for people to sit down. Special events, they usually do have some tables for people to sit down. But here at City Hall, we will set it up to where people can socialize, sit down, break bread together, and, enjoy a variety of food types. The city's not going to charge for it because we recognize that food trucks are something that's very important to the social fabric of the community. And as I said before, most of these places where you see a single food truck on a commercial site, there's not places for people to sit and eat. In addition to that, if there were, they're taking up required parking spaces for that place. So we're trying to find a happy median, and part of that is having 2 events here at City Hall. I think the plan right now is Thursdays and Saturdays. We will talk to the stakeholders and see if there are better days. Obviously, Mondays and Wednesdays and Tuesdays are not necessarily good here. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, more appropriate. I agree with you 100% on the socialization aspect of it, and we are addressing that by providing a location for that socialized food truck event.
I respect your comments, sir, but the fact is, we're going to make it available at City Hall, but we're not going to make it available for anybody else. That's what we're saying. Basically, that's what we're saying. I mean, that's why I think we should look at it. And if a parking lot has spaces, there ought to be part of those spaces available should be for some kind of a pop-up or 10 by 10 or whatever, 10 by 20, whatever, and make that available so that people can go. Not everybody wants to come to City Hall. Some people just like to go down to the church on Providence or go, to Lowe's or wherever, and just sit there. But we're making it so they can only come here. I think we should look at that a little more closely. That's all I have on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Avila Vasquez, did you have any comments? I don't want to miss you.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question for Ron. How many of our neighborhood, and I'm sorry about it, I think I'm coming down with something also. How many of our neighborhood cities have food trucks in their neighborhood? And are there rules and regulations basically on what we have on paper right now?
We did look at Orange City's regulations and took some guidance from their regulations that they promulgated in Orange City. I am not aware right now of some of the other cities and their regulatory schemes.
Okay, are they as popular with the food trucks as Deltona is getting?
I think there is popularity with that business model, throughout West Volusia County. Just,
Okay.
From anecdotal driving around.
Okay, I have a question, and it's based on individual food trucks versus special events food trucks. So when you have individual, and again, I'm just throwing these questions out there. I'm not attacking food truck vendors. I think, it's working with them to try to make sure that everything is, the commissioners are doing possible for them to be successful in their business. But I have some questions that, as I hear people talking, are coming up. So individual food trucks, trucks go and they park at a site. Who goes up to them to make sure that they are licensed and they are legit and they have all their paperwork that is required?
That
And we're talking about individual food trucks, like you see in the corners or in the churches or things like that?
That would be the job of code compliance, to check out the applicability for that food truck to be at that particular location. Obviously, this is going to be incumbent upon the city to keep records of what food truck is approved for what site. And, you know, that would be part of the record-keeping system.
Okay, so that takes me into the special events. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because on page 6, you spoke about license associated with alcohol. So we don't hear this as much anymore at the city of Deltona when we have special events, because most of them are done at the center, and the center holds the liquor license, right?
It has a liquor license, yes, ma'am.
Correct. I did a lot of special events, meaning I put on events before I was a commissioner for fundraising or for whatever. So all the responsibility fell on me to get all the permits and stuff for the event. Permits from the city, permission from the site owner, whether it be the plaza or whatever. And then I would get food truck vendors. With those food truck vendors, I also had to make arrangements with the fire department, because the fire department, even though these food truck vendors have license and permits, the fire department still has to come on site and inspect that they are set up within a distance, and I'm talking about vendors with cooking and fire and stuff like that they are set up within a certain distance from each other, and that they are properly set up their equipment. Am I correct?
Correct.
Right, because I remember I couldn't start my event until I got permission from the fire inspector. My next question is about the liquor license. As an event coordinator, I had the advantage of having the liquor license if we sold liquor, right? However, as I think was Commissioner Sosa said, I have to get my liquor permit from the county. But I also it was required for me to have a deputy on site. So anyone who had liquor on their property had to have a deputy. Has that changed?
No, ma'am. The language about alcohol as it appears in the code is to understand if they're going to serve alcohol. That's simple. So that we can ask those further questions about a deputy on site and so forth.
And I had to pay for the deputy on my own for my own money, in addition to the permit from the county. So my question is, can a truck, one truck in one site, sell liquor with a liquor license or permit?
I am not sure if a truck could sell liquor or not. There may be a Department of Business and Professional Regulation allowance to do just that. I mean, I've seen, mobile beer trucks before, but, that's kind of, we haven't seen that, to my knowledge, here in the city where somebody is, selling alcohol out of a food truck. Not to my knowledge, at least.
Let me, Ron, if I could jump in. My understanding is the incidents in which we've had alcohol sales have been during special events when there is a liquor selling facility within the complex. And presumably they would be getting what's called an extension to their alcohol license. Alcohol license usually are confined to the business itself, but they can request what's called an extension, which allows them to sell, and the people go outside the business establishment onto the parking lot or whatever. That's when you have to have the sheriff's department at the entrances to the event to ensure that nobody walks off site with the alcohol.
And again, I'm not attacking the food trucks. I'm bringing all this stuff up so that we are all aware, because since we are just reviewing the regulations right now, maybe this is something that was missed or can be added as an FYI to someone who wants to do a special event. And there's a lot of things that are, they have to come up with for a special event. I had to have garbage. I had to have deputies, EMS, and fire department. So that's just, for me to put up a special event on my own. So, and then again about the tent and the chairs, when you put a special event, that's on the person who's organizing the event. That's on them. It's not on the city. So the organizer of the event is the one that has to give permission. As far as an individual truck, I don't know. I think it should be between the food truck and the owner of the property to give that person permission. I don't know if the city should take on that responsibility to monitor all this. If they have a tent and chairs and tables, then we must assume that they got permission from the owner of the property. Am I correct?
I think that is a logical assumption that they did get permission to set all that up. I'm not, again, I can only assume.
Okay. I'm just looking at my notes here. And I just want to, I think I covered all the little notes that I made while I heard everyone talking. And I just want to make another comment. Again, we're working with the food truck vendors to make this, possible, that everything is done according to the regulations on both sides, from the vendors as well as the city. So we have food truck vendors at Open Gateway Center in DeBerry when they first opened up. I don't remember tables and chairs. I remember it was like a drive-through or walk-through. People would eat while they're walking and stuff like that. And just, I don't know who made a comment, but I just want to say and remind everyone that even though we are working with the food trucks, and we all received this email today, maybe one or two emails, residents and business owners are starting to speak up with their concerns about what we're doing with the food trucks. They have a lot of concerns, if this takes place and if we open it up to all the food trucks. I'm just saying, letting everybody know that we are starting to get emails about businesses and residents who are concerned about the increase of food trucks in the city of Deltona. So again, this meeting was put together so that we can discuss the pros and the cons and how we can fix the cons to make sure that everything is beneficial and it works properly for the food trucks, for our residents, and for our business, local restaurants. I have nothing else to say, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. So we're going to go, we have Commissioner McCool, Commissioner Sosa, and Commissioner King back on the board. But before we go through that, I just want to ask a couple questions and clarify a couple things. So first of all, State Statute 509.102, House Bill 1193 was put into law July 1st, 2020. And that particular statute and bill state that food trucks have to go through the permitting licensing process through the state, and the state can no longer allow that or demand from them a permit, a BTR, or any additional licensing. So we're out of that party. There is no permit that we are allowed to have, whether we charge for it or not. So any reference to a permit, unless it's a special event, should be stricken from anything that we do as far as an ordinance is concerned, because you're not allowed. Number two, the same thing as with the licensing. There's no, and also with the BTR, there's no indication that a local fire department, whoever it may be, cannot do the inspection. From what I can find, that is not prohibited.
That's correct.
Correct.
So I think that when you're now, the deputy chief just mentioned a gas inspection and a fire inspection, I think that needs to be clarified the next time we meet, that we have a clarification on what the standard practice is, and if we have to ask every other city in the county and around here to find out what they do, we need to have a protocol for what we're going to inspect.
Madam Mayor, we patterned most of this ordinance over orange cities. Bill Reichman wrote that one when the state basically preempted the city with regards to doing a BTR or, so we, again, the city has authority with regards to zoning. We have authority with regard to the fire department. There is no fee being charged by the fire department, nor in this ordinance is there any attempt by the city to require a business tax license, nor do they have to pay for that.
Right. Well, I just want to be clear, and I'm saying this as to put this on the public record because there are people that are on their computers and watching on TV, and I just want to be clear. So let's talk about houses of worship. That was put into effect, ordinance number 25-2014. Upon application by a house of worship, of course, this is all irrelevant now, the city manager as designee may grant a permit for the sale of food on the house of worship property upon the completion of an application and payment of a $20 fee. Irrelevant. Such permit shall allow the sale of food by no more than one vendor at a time during daylight hours only on house of worship property. And I can guarantee you that we've not been enforcing that for a long time. But that's in our code of ordinances. The permitting part we can't do. But to say that we're taking things away from houses of worship, we are already not enforcing what's in our code, which says one food truck at a house of worship and dusk, bye-bye. And I've seen a lot after dusk. So I'm just saying that this is already in our code of ordinances that we have not followed. So I don't see that we're even enforcing that now, and especially we can't with the permitting part. So a couple other questions that I have, or comments. So when looking at this ordinance, do you have anything in here that addresses waste receptacles of vendors? That they need to have any type of a waste receptacle, because most of these other ordinances that I've looked at throughout the state have reference to waste receptacles to clean up the waste and have a waste receptacle there. And also it addresses not dumping grease or water or any waste into the stormwater drain system, especially if you're outside. Those two things were put in multiple other ordinances. Also, when we talk about location, because that's a big one, location, to me, when you have a regular business, you have to go through a site plan process, a brick and mortar business. And I've been through enough of these where we've had arguments on this dais as to whether or not the brick and mortar business has enough parking. Case in point, Lohman Funeral Home, multiple years ago. The doctor's office or whatever it was across the street that had two businesses in there had less parking than the funeral home. But you have a site plan for a reason. Another example I'll give you right now is the TD Bank on Providence Boulevard. Having someone else purchase that property, it's vacant. They're having to go through a site plan process to put another business in there, tear down the building and redo it. They have to have X amount of parking, X amount of buffers. That's required by the city for safety, beautification, and not to invade on the other properties. So when you talk about parking and a site plan, as I said before, site plan on an 8x10 piece of paper that shows the drawing of the building and where you're going to put the food truck should be adequate to me, and I'm glad we corrected that. To me, the parking situation should have a determination in whether or not the food vendor is allowed to put up a 10 by 10 and seating. If you have a big enough piece of property that's not going to take up an extra too many parking spaces and you can have ingress and egress without problems, why can't you put up a 10 by 10 and a table? But to me, the size of the property where the vendor is going to be displaying the truck should determine how much space is there for regular parking and ingress and egress. And let's talk about the property that Mr. Peters referenced in the corner of Normandy and Providence. It's been 3 different vendors there. Hot dog vendor was the smallest of all of them, Commissioner Sosa. The largest one was some sort of a massive barbecue situation that was a minimum of 3 feet into the driveway. Forget about close to the pump. When you pulled in there, you had to go around, and that is a very tight business anyway, because you have the pizza place that has all those big concrete block things sitting there. You don't have a good flow of traffic there anyway. And then you pop a vendor there that sits there for hours on end and is in the drive access. That's a problem. Now you have another one. You're saying you're not addressing itinerant merchants. You're addressing food trucks. I see somebody selling food there out of a truck. It's a food truck. So when the latest one that's there is selling fish out of the van with a table and 10 signs, that doesn't qualify as a food truck, I understand. That's an itinerant vendor. So what's the rules for that guy? Because if you're going to have rules for these people, you need to have the same kind of rules. No signs. Is he in the proper thing? Because that's fair, because I am a layman. I don't determine whether or not, I see somebody selling food, right? And they're taking up the same spot that the hot dog people were and the barbecue people and whoever else is there randomly. So if we're not going to address that, to me, that's an issue. Let's talk about the other situation, signs. My personal favorite, sign code, nightmare, always been. Not going to change. However, I have seen brick and mortar businesses be denied flags. There's a salon on one of our major streets several years ago wanted to put the flag, those tall flag signs in front of their business. Nope, not allowed, no can do. Beautiful. Now, down the road, maybe less than a half a mile, you got the flags all over the place for the food vendors, among others. So if a brick and mortar business has to go through a process of signage and parking, ingress and egress, fire hydrants, is there not something about parking by fire hydrants? Should all be part of the same process, because it's wrong to deny a brick and mortar business signs, flags, etc., and a mobile vendor, whoever it may be. It doesn't matter if it's the truck guy or you guys or someone selling toilet paper out of their van, because that's happened too. No kidding, I have a picture. Someone sent it to me. Boxes of toilet paper out of their van. Hey, we got this going on. Should fall under the same classification because they're taking up parking spaces too in a small plaza. So I think, to me, I understand, because I advocated for this over 4 years ago when we started having issues, to have some sort of a regulation. Thank goodness we didn't do it, because we would have had to change it now anyway with the state. But let's not overthink this. Let's not overthink it and make all these regulations. You have to have itinerant merchants in there somewhere, because if you don't, it's not fair to these people that have to follow rules, and you can have somebody else popping up a truck or a van or a car somewhere else, taking up parking, putting up signs, selling food, and it doesn't matter. So I'm sure I forgot something in my little list here, but I will go to Commissioner McCool, Commissioner Sosa, Commissioner King, and then I believe we have members of the public that would like to speak. So we have 35 minutes, give or take. So let's, Commissioner McCool?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unmarried women parachuting on Sundays can risk jail time. Horse theft is punishable by hanging. Being publicly clothed in liquid latex is illegal. And also, publicly singing in a swimsuit is illegal. Those are some of the Florida laws that actually exist. It is a job of the state to write the law. It is a job of the localities to enforce. So when the state legislator came out regarding not making it undue burden for a business owner, they were talking about like boxing timekeepers, barbers, who are having to get 5 and 6 permits, right, in order to do business. That's how that Florida legislation came about. It wasn't written specifically for food trucks, okay? But you were covered under that. My reason in telling you that is that this is not, we're not trying to be punitive, regulatory, and sacking you with financial loss. Do I think that there's some financial undue burden? Absolutely, especially if you're having to apply for multiple permitting, right? It's financial. I understand that. Okay, I understand that. It's something that needs to be talked about. We're not trying to reach in your pockets. Me, I'm not. I'll speak for me, I'm not. I'm not trying to overregulate you. I'm not the big bad government coming down, man, to tell you how to live your life. That's not what's going on, but some people would have you to believe it's us against you, and it's bull crap. I want you to be successful. I'm looking you in the eye right now, and I'm telling you, I want you to be successful. This is to protect everyone, and you included, period. You're part of the process because I need to understand what is your concern. And from what I hear, it's overregulation and financial loss. I think you're fine with most of the stuff in here. Signs might be a little iffy, but there's a safety issue. I'm sorry, the big flaggy, wavy ones. Do I want to sit down at the food truck? Yeah, I want to sit down at the food truck. If I'm telling people meet me at, get me a good stuffed potato, I want to sit down and be able, if I want to, right? So there's things to be visited. This is not the last conversation that we have about this, but this is how we approach civil discourse. And we talk about, we need to understand what the concerns are, right? We don't need to pick up pitchforks and knives here. This is not what it's about. I'm not trying to take your rights. I'm not trying to take your money. So I just want to say that. Remembering, yeah, the state has handed down, the state might handle the DBPR. Yeah, that's true, right? And I don't know, because I've looked also what your state fire inspection is, but it is the state's responsibility to hand that down. Locally, however, I want my local fire chief to know what is going on your trucks, because I want accountability. It's not about over-governing you. It's about accountability. And I want to know that the people that I depend on and I pay with my taxpayer money and that I entrust with taking care of the public are doing that. And that's the local people. That's not the state. And I'm not even going to get into the weeds about how overreaching the state is as far as letting people locally. You want to get into government and see what they're really doing, okay? So what I'm saying is this stuff is not meant to be punitive. These conversations aren't one way here. We're really trying to understand, I think that everybody agrees that there has to be oversight here and accountability. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to regulate you, not trying to regulate how much money I'm not trying to do that, man. Don't let anybody tell you it is us against you. Because I'm a taxpayer and I'm a business owner, and that's baloney, because I really, really am concerned about how to help you do business better, how to make us look beautiful as a city, right? How to talk to one another without people pitting people against one another for whatever their political, grandiose, whatever that crap is. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you making money and supporting your families. I'm interested in you operating safely in the city that I live in, right? That's what I'm interested in. I'm telling you that face to face. I don't remember not ever answering any of your emails either. Again, it's not us against them. There are things that you're absolutely right about. You know, I want to sit down too. Commissioner King, if we want to have a cigar and chicken wings, we need to sit down and have a cigar and chicken wings, right? Truly. So that's something to be, but that's what we're doing here, okay? We're visiting this stuff. So don't let anybody, there's no sides here. There's really not. These people are working really hard. The staff hears you. I hear you as your commissioner. Your mayor hears you, okay? The other stuff is the chattering of 1,000 monkeys is what that is. I care about your business, okay? And I want to hear from you, your public comments, okay? So please don't let that happen, okay? I don't want your money, man. I want you to make money in a safe manner, okay? I'm here to help. So tell me what I can do to help in your public comments, okay? Tell me how I can help. Write to me and tell me what your concerns are. Is it about you losing money, right? Is it about being in a certain location? That's what I want to hear because I want to help you. I'm not here to fight you, man. Regardless of what anybody would say, I'm not here to fight you, and neither is anybody else up here. So I did not mean to run up. That's really important that you understand that the state can put these laws, but you just heard other laws that they put down also. It's up for us to discern how to enforce locally. It's about how we use that law, right? And we're trying to do it in the most generous way possible while being safe. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Sosa and then Commissioner King.
Okay, I don't want to muddy the waters with special events, but we did have a really good special event back, I think it was 2018, where we had alcohol. It was bacon and brew, so you probably had the special events permit, and they had mobile liquor license and so forth. So we have had that here, and yeah, so it's not something new for us. I do with the signage. Snipe signs are illegal, right? Code enforcement, if they see one, whether it's on a personal, my house, or on a piece of property, business, whatever, they have the authority at this time under the ordinances we have to stop and pick that sign up, correct?
Typically, if they're in the right of way, yes.
Well, even if it's on your personal property. I know because I've taken one of mine before.
Okay.
And then I got fined for it, too. So, I know they can pick up signs and flags if they want to. Marcia, yes, they can. Don't shake your head. Well, then I want my $60 back because I had to pay a fine. It was a simple sign many years ago saying Sosa Karate. Had my phone number on it. So, we already have ordinances where code enforcement can't take signs and they can't take flags. The nice thing to do is if it's a flag, those things are expensive, say, hey, can you take your flag down? I don't want to take it. If it's up again, take it. But we already have an ordinance in there for signage, so that should not be an issue. We've already got stuff here. We have all kinds of things here that we're taking a piece from here, piece from here, piece from there, and we're putting it back into another ordinance. We already have all this stuff in place. And quick question, going back to parking spaces, how are parking spaces calculated for a business? Is it based on the square foot of the business, or is it based on the potential customers coming into that business?
It's based on all the above. It's the type of business, and it's usually expressed in a ratio of X number of spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area or something like that.
Commissioner Sosa, just to further expand on that, our code does not just come out of a vacuum. The parking standards are based on national standards. They have been tested around the country as to be an appropriate level of parking. And I think in our particular case, it's the American Planning Association parking requirement. There's also ITE has a parking requirement. So they're based on national standards.
Okay. Well, that's where I'm getting at, because we've already said for this site plan, you need X amount of parking spaces for the size of your building. Now, what you do with those parking spaces is up to you. The city really does not have the right to come in and tell me what to do with my parking spaces. Because if you think about it, we've got businesses here in Deltona that have parking spaces that they use for storage. So was that calculated into the site plan? If not, I don't see the harm of having a food truck that takes two spots. Because I've seen businesses here that use part of the parking lot for storage. I don't have a problem with it. If that's what their business space is, that they have X amount of spots they can use for that, that's fine. It's not blocking any of the, the driving going up and down the lanes or anything. I personally don't have a problem with that because that's their private property rights. And I think we're overstepping here trying to, control people's private property rights. What you want to do with your business is up to you.
Commissioner, you good? Okay. Commissioner King?
Ron, I think you alluded to this earlier. I just want to make sure that it's clear and on the record. If I remember correctly, at the last meeting where we discussed this and we had a room full of folks that were interested in what was going on, during that meeting, we made a comment that the city needed to get together with the food truck owners to get their input so that we would write an ordinance that was good for them and good for us. And I believe I saw, I don't know if it was you or somebody else, when the meeting was over, I felt really good because I was walking out and I was looking back there in the back and somebody was back there, looked like they were taking names and numbers. Now, having said all that, my question is, have you guys sat down, have you had a meeting with the food truck vendors for their input into what they feel is fair and appropriate? And have you all had a dialogue in some kind of meeting where it's helped to write this, or have you written this? And as you said earlier, well, we sent this to them, but, we reached out to them by sending this to them, but we haven't heard anything back from anybody.
What we did is we took input from the commission at a previous workshop. We recorded some names at a regular commission meeting as part of public participation. And the purpose of this meeting was to solicit that input from the food truck interest out there. And this, like I said, this was sent out to the food truck interest Wednesday or Thursday of last week with notice of this meeting.
Okay. I think we just dodge the issue by not reaching out to them and actually having a meeting with them prior to this meeting to say, hey, don't go operate your business tonight, come to the meeting. I mean, that's not the way things work. I think we had a similar discussion when we were talking about when we were going to have the magistrate meetings. It's the same issue here. I just wish that we would, do things that at least appear to be on the up and up instead of kind of sliding through and, saying, well, we let everybody know 4 days ago and, look how many people showed up tonight. They must not care too much because we only got 10 people in the room. I just wish there had been a meeting. I think we need to do a little bit more work, as the mayor said, on this and make some revisions. And I think that we should talk to the people that are running the food trucks to get their input, because they're the ones that are in this business, and they are the ones that can help us write an ordinance that will be good for them and good for the city. And until the city begins to think like that, I think we're going to have trouble. And no matter what we do, there's always going to be those people that are going to say, well, we should have done this and we should have done that, because nobody ever talked to us, nobody ever said anything, and they just wrote it and said, here's what it is, what do you think? And by then, people are going, well, it's too late, they've already made up their mind, they've already decided. We need to involve these folks in a different way than we're doing it. So I hope we can do that before we come back to another session about this food truck issue. Listen, I'm all for the food truck ordinance. I'm all for the food truck vendors. And there's some things that we need to fix and change before we put a stamp of approval on this ordinance. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. King, if I may address your comments, I think we're doing everything on the up and up. The reason we're here at a workshop, we have provided this information prior to the workshop. Tonight is an opportunity for all parties, the commission, staff, and the vendors to talk about what we're presenting. So tonight is that opportunity for the vendors to speak. We went out of our way to provide this information to them prior to this meeting. I disagree with your thing about not being on the up and up, because we have been everything that we can to be, including this meeting tonight. If we weren't on the up and up, we would have just brought an ordinance to you and never have a workshop. But we have been trying to put together an ordinance that is fair to our parties. Some of the people that we're not hearing from and haven't been included in this process are the brick and mortar businesses, the people that have restaurants. There's a lot of people who have restaurants that are concerned about the food truck because it takes business away from them. They're the ones that pay taxes. They're the ones that have an investment in the city. The food truck vendors, by virtue of the type of business they're in, the city, we don't get any revenue from them, but we're trying to accommodate them because there is a need in the community for it. So we put together an ordinance that we felt was fair, doesn't cost people money. It's not a revenue generator for it, that's for sure. It's actually going to cost us more money to implement the program. But we can assure the public that it's going to be a safe environment, that it meets our basic code requirements, and I mean basic. A lot of these commercial properties, as Ron said in the very beginning of the discussion, are woefully short on parking. Ms. McCool's favorite plaza right down here on Elkham, I could not imagine somebody trying to put a food truck in there. There's not enough parking as it is on a regular basis. And that's part of what we have to look at. If somebody came in for a permit to put a food truck at that plaza, I would hope that staff would deny it because there's inadequate parking. So we have, part of the reason for this meeting is to give people an opportunity to speak. We've given them a copy of what we're proposing in advance so that when you open the floor to the public to speak, I'm sure you're going to hear some things from the food truck industry. But be mindful, we didn't provide copies of this to the brick and mortar people. They have a say, and that's part of what you all have to do, is to look at, what is our ultimate goal? Do we want to have nice sit-down restaurants? Do we want to have places for, you talk about socializing, that's what restaurants are for. But, we're trying to give them an opportunity to know they can be at a place every day. That's what this ordinance does. If they want to have a larger event, they get a special event permit, or the city sponsors events on city-owned property. And we're trying to address all three in the short time that I've been here. And so tonight is the opportunity for the food truck vendors to speak.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and now go to public comment. We have 15 minutes left of the workshop, and I want to make sure that we get everyone's public comment in. What I would suggest members of the public, when you want to speak, and if, it's all going to be, it's recorded and minutes will be taken, but we want to make sure that we write down your concerns and we have a list of those for staff to look at and identify and for all of us to address. So if there's a specific thing that's bothering you and you have a suggestion for it, please state that. So if you'll go ahead and,
Okay. Madam Mayor, we have 6 public comments: Lisa Hager, Joel Dawson, and then Joshua Wiley.
okay, who's ever first? Is it?
Yeah, Lisa Hager, please.
As you know, I'm Lisa Hager, and I'm from the Deltona United Church of Christ. And I did not know until our last meeting about the food trucks are not allowed at the church after dusk. I would like to see that change. That's not fair to us. I believe that we have food truck vendors that comes to our church. And we are the one that he was talking about earlier about the 2 permits in 1 month. One of them is a pumpkin patch, and another one's for a fall festival. Why are we going to be limited to 1 a month? That's not fair. It's also not fair for us to even have a limitation on 1 food truck when our church can handle many, many, but I understand about the special permit. I don't see why I can't have 2 or 3 there. And they're not there every day. Mondays, I don't have anybody. Tuesdays, I might have 1, but then I get phone calls. Can I come? Can I come? Can I come? No, I'm sorry. I would like to see it to where the changes for the churches to have 2 or even more if possible, because we have a food truck, we have a dessert truck. I can't have, now I'm saying I can't have a dessert truck, or I can't have a barbecue truck and a Puerto Rican truck. They're telling me I can only have 1. That's not fair to the church. Unless we have a special permit, now I'm being told I can't have two special events in 1 month. And I think it's even wrong that they're even telling us that our pumpkin patch is a special event. And for the year 2020, I put on pumpkin patch.
Thank you. Joel Dawson, please.
Email us that information, would you? Or just leave it with us, because I don't, normally we don't talk back in public comment, but in an ordinance that would be repealed, am I correct? We would repeal the house of worship. That part of the ordinance would have to be repealed in a new ordinance. It's irrelevant, it would have to be repealed, so that would not be a problem anymore for that. Mm-hmm.
Joel Dawson, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joel Dawson on the Brothers in Arms Barbecue. I just want to say something real quick. When you say, Ms. McCool, you say it's not us against, it's not you guys against us. Reason I feel like the people feel like that, because I've done plenty of permits. I've done a lot of events here in the city. As a matter of fact, I told Mr. Peters in his office personally, pulled the permit that same day, got it approved. The next event I did at the church, code enforcement showed up and said, hey, you better have your permit or we'll be shutting it down, like it was already planned. So when it says you're not against us, it's like they was already waiting for me to not have a permit. I'm like, yo, this is the city, do you not guys communicate? Now, another thing I want to address is we've done a lot of events. It's 3, with Wing It to the Bone, Mr. Vernon, and Josh Wilder. We started the whole community fellowship at the church. We have no incidents, 0 incidents, no accidents, nobody getting in trouble, no traffic. I'm talking about we didn't have that parking lot slammed. We have somebody watching the gate. It has a stoplight there, so people's following the traffic laws. So they're coming in and out when the light turns green. So there wasn't any traffic incidents, no incidents at all whatsoever. We hold to a higher scrutiny because we're all food trucks. So we could get popped up visits at any given point in time. So we follow the same law as any restaurants do. So we have those, those qualifications. Also, to address Mr. Peters, when you said it's only can socialize at restaurants, what do you think we are? We're a mobile restaurant. So they sit down, they network. We meet some great people in this community. I met plumbers. I met people that work on my house. I met people that work on my food truck. So when you say just grab your food and go, I have to disagree with you on that. That's how I met a lot of you guys at my food truck events. The one we had the sheriff, we had the mayor, we had you guys in the dunk tank. You get what I'm saying? So let's just think about that, what we're doing. If it ain't broke, I mean, some adjustments, rules need to be placed. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Same thing with the in the Marine Corps. Let's make it happen, guys, please.
Thank you, sir.
Joshua Wiley, please.
How y'all doing? I'm pretty sure everybody, knows me a little bit from Fat Boy Potatoes. I just want to address a couple things. First, to Mr. Peters, this was not addressed well to the food trucks in the area. Food trucks, personally, I had to reach out to and tell, hey, there's a meeting going on. Nobody else got, a lot of food trucks did not get emails. It was because of me reaching out to other food trucks that I'm friends with who were like, oh, we didn't even know about it. You know what I mean? So it was not produced well. And then as far as, my same thing with, the restaurants being for socialization, I've met a lot of great people in Deltona since I've been here. From being at my food truck, from socializing at my food truck. I feel like it's a little biased for you to be like that. To Mr. Victor, as far as what you saw this morning on the interview from Channel 13, yes, I did say something about churches being possibly taken away from us. If you heard the news reporter, he said it is a possibility. I didn't say it was for sure, it was a possibility because it was possibly talked about. Overall, I have no problem following rules. Anytime the fire department's got with me, I used to be at the gas station. Miss Lisa came, she said, hey, you can't park here because of the 10 feet rule. Cool, I moved. You know what I mean? But to limit us to having one truck per day, I go somewhere different 5 days a week. So I shouldn't have to be somewhere Monday through Friday in order to be able to be there. You know what I mean? But if I want to be able to come there on a Tuesday and set up with, somebody who sells ice cream, that shouldn't be a problem. You know what I mean? We shouldn't have to go get a special permit, I feel like, for that. For 2 trucks. You know what I mean? Should we have to follow our rules? Inspections, of course, we already do. But I feel like some of this stuff is just poking and poking. And, whenever you guys get the response from the city, then it's like, oh, well, you guys, it's not against us. It's not you guys.
Thank you.
Then it becomes a bigger problem.
Thank you, sir.
Elizabeth Chavez, please.
And can you call the next person after Ms. Chavez?
Yes, then Alex Santiago.
Okay.
And Maria Eversole.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Chavez, Deltona. You guys know that I'm not.
Can you pull your mic down a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
You guys know that I'm not a mobile food truck vendor, but I do have a nonprofit in which these gentlemen were present for that. I feel that it was a successful event. I think that there's camaraderie between them, and it also brought people to my event. It was a car wash, a yard sale, and then I had them in the back. So I'm all for them and for whatever rules to keep us safe, especially with the food and fire and gas pumps and all that stuff. But I don't think that there's great. The biggest issue that I see in my city with these food trucks is Normandy and Providence, the itinerary ones. And because when I go to their places, it's cooked food. I know I'm eating fresh, and that's maybe another issue that they might have. I've known people that bought fish from them, and it's it's rotten. So this is, maybe they are the ones that you should be checking more closely. But these people, they're wonderful, they're great, and all they're doing is trying to, make a living. Why make it difficult for them? And the ordinance for 2 minutes should change to 4 minutes for time for public speaking.
Thank you.
Alex Santiago, please. Then Maria Eversole.
My name is Alex Santiago. I own the Grateful Cow food truck. I just wanted to You know, they pinpointed a lot of things I wanted to talk about, but the misinformation is something that bothers me a lot, and it's on both sides, unfortunately. And I would think coming together and having a meeting with the business owners would be the way to solve a lot of those issues, rather than getting an email 4 days before an event or before a city commission meeting like this. The first draft we got did say on there that they wanted to remove house of worship for us being able to park on the house of worship. Most of us learned today, if you're not connected in the government and reading every single line, that they actually took that off. So that's a surprise to us. That's why it was a concern that was brought up, and a lot of people were fussing about it. Things like the same thing with the hood inspections. We have to have our hood cleaned every 6 months, but then we have to have it inspected by a fire inspector. We have to pay a big fee every 6 months. So having multiple fire inspections over and over again, whether it's cost-free or not, takes time away, and time is money in the business like this. Small businesses, we don't have the luxury of being able to delegate all the time and have these things done by employees and whatnot. So I just wanted to have that kind of meeting to be together, because it sounds like the commission's just going to a bunch of lawyers and doing it the right process rather than getting input from us. And of course, people are going to fight back. Even it sounds like now it's going to be free to park at the city hall for these events. When it was brought to us originally, it was $75 every time we wanted to sit there and park at City Hall. All this information is just getting mucked up. I think we need to have a meeting where we all sit down and talk it. Not, you're invited to come say what you want to say in 2 minutes, and you better get it right the first time, because I'm jumbled and I don't know what to say. I don't speak publicly, so sorry for wasting any 2 minutes.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Eversole, then Vernon Hunt.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you. Thank you for trying to get us all together and come to a conclusion or something settled for all of us. We are residents of Deltona, and we're trying to do the best for our residents, for our customers. Regardless some of the regulations, I wanted to see if it was possible, as for fire inspection, to consider for us. Some of us are inspected in 2 different counties. Me, for example, I am inspected in Seminole. I do get inspected over there twice a year. So coming over here twice a year as well. And the only reason why I'm inspected over there is because even though my kitchen has everything, I still have to have the commissary kitchen. In order to have my commissary kitchen, I have to be inspected where my kitchen is. So if you guys please consider that, maybe we can email one so we can only avoid one. Yes, our fire extinguishers, they have to be inspected. They're not by the fire inspectors, so those we have to pay. Our menus, please, don't ask for copies of that. If one day I want to make a chicken tortilla soup, and the next day I want to make menudo, I'm violating the law. So please just consider that. And because I sell soup, allow me to have some tables. I cannot give a cup of soup to my customers and let them go home. By the time they get home, I mean, that should be optional, you know? If they want to take part of the soup home, it's their choice, but allow them to have a meal. It's not like we have 20 tables. Most of us will have 1 table, 4 to 6 chairs. That's all. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Vernon Hunt, please.
Good evening, everybody. How everybody doing? Mr. Peters, I heard you make a comment about socializing and meeting friends. When you go to McDonald's, how many friends do you meet? You know, you just get your food and you go. I'm sorry, I was late here, so I didn't hear everything. I've been in Deltona 15 years. I've owned a food truck for 4 years. And not one time did I get any email about this meeting today. So if I didn't get a meeting, email, or if it wasn't for Josh Wiley today, I wouldn't even be here. So I'm pretty sure over 60% of the food trucks probably not even aware that we had a meeting today. We all do the best we can to go by whatever laws you have. I have went by everything. I've never had any ordinance or any sanctions against me. As far as food trucks, I don't think we ever had any foodborne illness or anybody gotten sick from a food truck. far as I'm aware of. So we go through everything a restaurant goes through, and probably more, because we can get a pop-up inspection at any time. So I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to speak. I would definitely say, can you please delay the workshop, allow other food trucks to be here, because, like I said, I've been here 4 years doing food trucks, and this is the first time I even heard about a meeting today. So thank you guys, and just think of the small businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor, this ends public comment.
Okay, thank you very much, and we have about 2 minutes to go. And I think some things just need to be clarified here. I know that it's hard to reach every single vendor in any field, but I think also that I think we need more input, and I think that, I know staff has done a lot of work with this, but I think the clarification issue, even for us on this dais, between special events and food trucks and itinerant merchants is very muddied. And I think that the houses of worship issue, that is going to be, first of all, what's in there now can't be addressed because it requires the permitting, and it just has to go out of the ordinance, has to be replaced with something else. But I mean, that's all going to be addressed. And I really think that I would ask that those of you that are vendors out here, if you would please leave, that if you didn't fill out a public speaking form, please leave your contact information with the girls from the clerk's office so that you can be put on an email list, or that if we want to contact you, that for some questions, that we could have that contact information. And if you would be kind enough to do that with the name of your food truck and your contact information, I mean, that would be helpful to me. And I don't know if that for the rest of the commission as well, and for staff, if you could do that. And I just have one other question, and just, I don't mean to poll you at all, but the one lady said she goes in Seminole County as well. Do all of you stay within Volusia County? Do you go to another county? Is this a big enough issue where you're having fire inspections in 2 counties? I think that's something also we need to address. Maybe Deputy Chief, you would have some comment on that. And also, just from my own personal knowledge, do you only stay in Deltona? Do you go to other cities? How is it when you go to Orange City to set up your food truck? I mean, these are just questions I would personally like to have answers to, not tonight, but those are things that I would like to know to help me understand. You know, we're all so close in cities. How does that work when you go to another city and so forth? Those would just be my personal questions. So at some point, I'd like to reach out and have some of those questions just answered and clarified for me personally. And I think probably the rest of the commission might be interested in that as well, to know how many of you like go to Orange City or DeLand. Do you only go for a special event? Do you go there on a regular basis? Do you go to another county? I'd like to know how that works for you, and how different things are when you go over the bridge to Seminole to what you do here, and so forth.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to make it clear, right now the Deltona code bans street vendors and itinerant merchants. They are not allowed at all.
It says in city property and rights of way.
Yes.
Doesn't address private property.
But it says that they are prohibited, and I don't know, private property wouldn't allow a commercial, that's a commercial use.
Right.
So
but I'm talking about, okay,
yeah.
but I mean, if you have a plaza, if I own a plaza and I have the fish man come, he's an itinerant merchant, or the toilet paper sellers, they're itinerant merchants. Even on my property as a plaza, they're not allowed?
I would say, based on what we have right now, no.
I'm going to look that over for clarification, because that was not clear for me. I really want to.
And I guess the reason I bring it up is we can work on the whole workshop, the worship, and we can work on trying to determine if somebody has an inspection in another location, that we can get a copy of it or recognize it. But I don't know if the commission wants to deal with with street vendors and itinerant merchants like the fish guy or the person who was selling toilet paper, or do you want to just prohibit it? So that's something that we need to deal with because that really hasn't been discussed.
I think it needs to be discussed because as a layman, what do you see as the difference? What do I see as a difference if I see someone selling fish out of a van with a bunch of signs, and the next day I see somebody selling hot dogs out of their cart?
Because this ordinance was an attempt to only deal with mobile vendors that are specifically regulated and licensed by the state.
Okay. Well,
so that separates them from any other kind of vendor. Okay. So when you get to the churches or you get to how many are allowed, that just becomes a question of, capacity and those kinds of issues, but it all has to do with food trucks,
then let me ask you
licensing.
one question because we're running over our time, and I'm sorry, commissioners, if you'll indulge me on one question. When you have a special event permit, are itinerant merchants allowed?
The special event permits and the application for it cuts across everything to allow that flexibility.
Okay.
So we're trying to make it clear, but we have mobile vending that the state has basically preempted, and there are certain regulations, and then we're trying to deal with your responsibility with regard to health, welfare, and safety. But then when we get into the street vendor itinerant, they've been kind of out there. Nobody's really dealt with them. But, the way I read the code right now, they're not legal anywhere. Okay. So that's something that we can put in this ordinance, a provision that deals with itinerant street vendors. But, we need some direction on how you all feel about dealing with them because they're a mixed bag, literally.
And I'm just going to leave you with one more question. If itinerant merchants are not allowed, we're not enforcing that either, am I correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, I think we are good for this evening. We appreciate everyone's input. I don't feel this is the end of this yet. I personally would like to have some discussions with the vendors, some discussions with our deputy chief, because I understand, ma'am, that you are involved with the entire county with this. And I would, at some point, if you're comfortable and Mr. Peters agrees to something like that and commission agrees to that, would you be opposed to having her do an update as to what they're doing for that county-wide?
Madam Mayor, and I think that we need to make it clear to our businesses, right, that this is not the last conversation here, that we will do, that we'll work on, we'll work on this and work to communicate better, right? And when you send us those emails, because I would like those emails also, let us know the best way to communicate, because not everybody's on Facebook or not everybody is sending emails. Listen, we're depending upon you, right, to try to help us create the best business model and practices for what you do. This is your specialty, right? So, Madam Mayor, am I right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We want you to be in business, and we want everyone protected.
This is not a one-size-fits-all. This is not something, because the regulations have changed so much from the state, and they've changed for other businesses as well, it's not so easy anymore. It's not, you can't say, okay, you can do what you want or you can't, we're going to prohibit you here and there. We have a lot of things that we have to look at, hence the involvement with legal. So I think that part of the problem in Deltona is that we have not enforced what's on the books right now for a long period of time. We haven't removed the snipe signs. We haven't removed the signage. We haven't said, when someone comes through the proper process and says, I'd like to have this sign, and we say it's not allowed, but somebody else sticks one up, we don't take it down. And that creates confusion all across the board with itinerant merchants and special events and vendors. So I think we have to do better. We have to do better. Thank you for coming out. This is not the end. We appreciate you. Thank you. We are adjourned.